Well, hi and welcome. Today we're going to talk about how to shoot fireworks in a really simple way where you can get some fantastic shots. This isn't as hard as you think, and shooting at night can be actually quite simple once you know the settings. Just a few rules, a few little things, and I'm going to give you one set of simple settings to start with so you won't be confused with all these different things that I've seen out on the web. My name's Larry Pollock. I'm a professional photographer here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I've done a lot of night shooting. That's one of those things that I sold images to National Geographic for Milky Way shots, and I still go out and do a lot of that. And occasionally, of course, once a year we get to do fireworks. So there's some places where you can find them much more often, and it's a really fun thing to even make abstracts out of, or even show like this image here, which is one of my favorites that I did with the settings I'm going to tell you about, and tell you how to make modifications depending on what's going on for you. So what are you going to need to do this? Well, first off, we got to follow the rules of photography. The first one is focus. We want to be in focus, so we'll talk about how to make sure that you're in focus in the dark. And the next one is exposure, having the correct exposure. It's not as hard as you think. It's actually pretty forgiving in these situations out here. So any camera will do. You don't have to have a professional DSLR. As long as you have a camera that you can make manual settings on and you got a decent lens, you can do this. You can even do that with one of these right here. This is an iPhone 7 Plus. You can do it with an Android, whatever you phone, as long as you get an app for manual. We'll talk about that down at the end of this. So those with iPhones only, you can get this done here. Trying to pack a lot of information in a short time. So the next thing you're really going to have is a tripod, some way to stabilize this process, because we're going to be doing, exposures that are longer than just a quick flash where we can kill the vibration. So you're going to need a tripod. That's just a must. You can borrow one, whatever you need to do. Next one, it is nice to have. It's not a mandatory, but that is a cable release. That allows you to step away from the camera a little bit and push things and enjoy the show and sit here clicking away. So that's one of the big things that I enjoy having, is that ability to step a couple of feet back from everything and just go ahead and enjoy the whole process while I'm taking pictures. And the lenses, 24 to 50 millimeter are probably best, though you can go 75, 70, 100, 200 if you're wanting to go in closer. So, don't stop just because maybe you don't have a lens that goes wide enough. But if you go down to something like 16 millimeters, 14 millimeters, now you've got an entirely different thing where the fireworks may look small. So what you're going to need to do is have more going on, like the cityscape and a crowd, and you're telling a story. So think about that. You may even do that at 24 millimeters or 50, where you see a little bit of the audience, or a lake. I used to live in Seattle, where the barge was put out on Lake Union with the city backdrop. We set up there in Gasworks Park, and you've got to have that beautiful show all together. So you want to get all of that and get a good exposure for the whole thing. And the exposure I'm going to give you should work with a few adjustments in case you're in a different situation. So memory cards, make sure you didn't forget them. You get out there and suddenly you have a full memory card that you don't want to erase, or you forgot them and you don't have any with you. So that's one thing before you go out the door. The other one is an extra battery. You might be shooting pictures all day with the family, and suddenly you need to go shoot the night and you've run out of battery. So make sure you have at least a spare with you, or some way to charge them up. Some of us carry external charging devices with us. So there's the first part. The next part is composition. You want to go out there before it's dark and find your spot that you can go to, or a couple of spots that you might want to work from. The shows don't last long, so you're probably going to get stuck with one. But go out there and find a spot that gives you the kind of composition. Are we trying to get the cityscape, or is it like my shot? There was no background. It was a dark sky. So I'm entirely focused on capturing what's going on in the show there, with a little bit of lights down at the bottom. I really had no other choice at this location in Cottonwood, Arizona. So those are the first things to choose. That'll kind of dictate your lens focal length you're going to play with from there, and you'll have an idea of how to set up. So once you're on that location, you want to make sure there's a place where people aren't walking constantly back and forth in front of your camera. If one person goes by once in a while, they're probably not going to affect your exposure. It's going to be just fine, because you're going to be in a situation where they're in motion and the camera's probably not going to see them. But if you have constant people going across, then you have a problem. You might even have the ground shaking and vibrating your tripod and messing up your shots. So again, pick out a good location and see if you can reserve that spot. I'm thinking that's about all I need to tell you about in that area there, but see if you can reserve that space, or maybe that's where you sit for the whole show. You set up your blankets and your food and you do everything you're going to do there, or you show up later, but make sure you have a few alternates in case that one's taken there. Or if there's someone already there, ask them if it's okay if you get up close with your tribe and you both get to work in the same spot. I've done that. I've even had our tripod legs interlocked with guys when it's a really tight space, and we'll all say, hey, let's just get all our cameras lined up. We've all got releases, so we don't have to be on top of each other physically. I have a wireless release, so I can literally step back and I could be 10 feet away and shooting. So, just be courteous is what I'm trying to get at there. So let's go and talk about the settings here. The first thing you want to do is get in focus. A lot of people are intimidated that at night you want to be in manual focus. So how do you get there? Well, you want to find a distant object and focus on it, and then like a light or a building or something. Even a little light sometimes will work. Or get a person to walk 100 yards from you and turn on a flashlight and point it at you. That'll work too. And then put the focus point on them and push your focus and let the autofocus acquire, and then go over the side of the lens and turn it into manual focus. Turn off that autofocus. Some of you may need to do that in your modern mirrorless cameras. You may have to do that inside the camera. The next thing to do is turn off image stabilization. That image stabilization has a gyro, and it's in there on the camera, and when it's on a tripod, you don't need it. Everything's already stable. There's no reason for it. You're not swinging the camera around like a sporting event. So it's very important to turn that off so this thing doesn't start hunting, and it can cause blurry pictures on its own that way. So turn off that. That's usually on the side of the camera, but again, some of these modern cameras may be inside the settings on these new modern mirrorless cameras. So those two things, manual focus so it doesn't move, and make sure that your image stabilization is off. Next thing is get a piece of tape, and on that focus ring, put it across. Something you can take off. I use gaffer's tape. It's not duct tape. It's a kind that peels off without leaving itself behind. So maybe some painter's tape or something. If you have nothing else, you can stick on there. So that focus ring can't move in the dark. Because too many times people come home and they got blurry pictures right at the grand finale, and they didn't realize something had changed. It got bumped in the process of them maybe playing with the zoom ring, which we'll talk about in a moment here. So tape that down, and you're ready to go. So now let's set the settings in the camera. We're going to go ISO 200. That gives me a space to go down a little and a little bit to go up. Gives me a nice exposure without creating a bunch of noise. Next thing is f16. Remember, these things are pretty darn bright, and if I have that opened up too much, when they go out, the whites and some of the core stuff's going to blow out, and you're going to have no detail. In fact, the center of something there may be just a big burst of light and nothing in it. So again, you're going to be watching that as pictures are being taken, in case you need to go to f18 or open it to f13 or whatever. Exposure time, well, mine here was 10 seconds. Every single shot was 10 seconds. How did I find that out? I counted from the time that fired down at the bottom, that cannon thing went off in the tube, and you went pop, and then I counted all the way to the top, and the whole thing had finished, and that was less than 10 seconds, 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, 8 seconds, these whole things would go on. You might have to adjust to 12 seconds, or maybe go down to 8 seconds if if you're getting too much light in from other areas. So just a slight adjustment there in the amount of time. But you can start here, but count those first few things and see how long this entire process is taking from that. So you get the whole trail, and you get the burst, and then it goes off, boom, shutters shut, and you're ready for the next shot. Then white balance. This is a really important thing to me because this involves how you get your colors to be true. Your blacks are blacks, your whites are white, and they don't have some weird blue tinge to them. And that makes sure all your other colors are true. Now we're guessing, because I don't know what these fireworks are, but I had good luck shooting between a white balance of 5,000 K and 6,000 K. This is basically daylight or cloudy on your camera. You can choose one of those and see what you think. If you're shooting in RAW, you can always change it later on in post-production in Lightroom or Photoshop, or many other applications allow you to do that. If you want a little cooler looking picture, let's say you've got a little bit of light in the sky and you want that sky to be bluer, you can drop that down to 3200, 3600, 4200. Basically try tungsten or white fluorescent settings on your camera, and that'll cool things down for you. You'll see it happen. Try a few shots that way, might be interesting. Again, RAW images, you can change it later. So what happens if your exposures are a little over, a little under, the foreground or the lake, the buildings, the city, whatever, are not right? Then you're going to be needing to make some quick adjustments. So you might, if you need more light, you might take f16 down to f13 or f11, take a shot or two real quick, see what happens. Your exposure length of time is going to be dictated by the show, so you get the whole thing. But if you're just trying to get the end burst, you might be able to go down to 4 or 5 seconds and just shoot there. Then you're guessing right. You're counting how long that thing goes up. Open your shutter just before the burst happens, and it's all over in a few seconds. Shutter shuts down. Now maybe you have a better exposure with the city or other things. So again, you may need to make some adjustments depending on what you're doing, whether you're trying to get the whole thing or just the main part of the bursts in the sky. Also, depending on how much zoomed you are in on it. You can move your ISO if you need to, but if you go up, you could cause noise in the shots. That noise in the shots is kind of like grain, and it can really destroy a shot if you get too high. My professional camera, I can get up to 3200, but I am getting some noise. I can deal with it to a degree in post-production. But consumer cameras are notoriously noisy as you get up 800 or above. So I would maybe go as high as 400 if you need to bring more light in that way. Let's see here. What else have we got here to finish and wrap this up? So again, play with these settings. Have fun with it. What we're going to talk about now is zoom. If you take that and put your hand out there, the reason to have that focus point locked in is you can get a hold of the zoom ring if you have a zoom lens on, and you can zoom in or zoom out during the shot. And I'm going to go through here and start showing a few shots, and we'll get to some of them that'll show you what I mean by that. So here's some more shots from this shoot in Cottonwood, Arizona. You can see all the different ones, all these done at 10 seconds, all the same settings, never changed a thing. You got to sit there enjoying the show. But right here, we got something different. What I did here was probably delay my zoom in or zoom out about halfway through the 10 seconds. So I waited 5 seconds, counting in my head, and then started zooming, or zooming in or zooming out. I don't remember which way I went. I was probably, in this case, already out and zooming in on it, and it changed the shape of the little things flying out there. So you can see these changes that go on when you do this. And this one I was zoomed in, and then I zoomed out. So the left side, you can see I've got the trail of one of them going up because I'm zoomed way in. But as I zoom out during the process, we start to see a bigger picture and see the smaller ones, and it makes really interesting abstracts. As you can see, here's some more zooming. More zooming here. So play with that. Play with the zooming the entire time, the full 10 or 12 seconds in or out. Maybe go out and then back in suddenly. Go and delay your zoom and don't start it for a second, or start it and stop it part way through. I mean, just have fun with it. After you've shot a certain number of shots and got the nice still ones, you might want to try some of these other techniques for fun here. Here's a real interesting one that happened with zooming in and out. We've got all kinds of fun things going on here. Might be able to crop that way down, have an interesting abstract, and be like, what the heck is that? So the last thing we'll talk about, and here's my favorite shot, the crowning glory of that nice one hit right on top. I got a beautiful triangle up there, and a triangle between the next two below. Just the whole picture composition-wise worked out beautifully. A slight tilt to them. All I had to do was add a little vibrance and a little sharpness, and we're off and running. There's really nothing else to do to this picture. So you can get some great stuff. So the final things is this iPhone or smartphone. Make sure you use a tripod for it too. Go in there like in Camera Plus, there was a way to go into settings and change it from auto to manual, and I was able to then have these extra icons on the camera page and go in and do the same settings I'm going to do in my DSLR and shoot that. For those of you who do time-lapse modes in these things, or they have movie modes, and maybe you have a little thing that allows you to turn your phone on a tripod, you could have it set up at the same time and go and get some movies as it's slowly sitting out there while this is all going on. So now you're getting a movie or a time-lapse while you're also doing your other shots there. So have fun with it. That's the simple settings there. You're just going to come away with some great photos, I know, and you can share them in the Photographer's Adventure Club. Go and see on our post here. I think maybe comments might allow you to put some down there. Let's see your pictures from this year. And as you go out there, have fun and be safe.